The sun was still low over the horizon when Alex adjusted her mask and fins, staring at the cerulean expanse of water before her. The ocean seemed calm, almost inviting, but the blue hole, a gaping mouth in the sea floor, had a reputation that made even seasoned divers hesitate. Today, she wasn't just diving for thrill or record. She was chasing the unknown, and something deep inside her whispered that this dive would change everything. She took a deep breath, feeling the familiar sting of cold water rush into her lungs as she slipped beneath the surface. The ocean enveloped her like liquid velvet, light fading the deeper she descended. Her heart hammered in her chest, but training and years of freediving discipline kept her movements controlled. As she approached the entrance of the blue hole, a shadow seemed to swallow the daylight. The walls of the underwater cave stretched down like ancient cliffs, narrowing with every meter. Alex glanced at her oxygen timer. Though she was holding her breath, every second counted. A sudden jolt shook her forward. A small rock tumbled down the wall of the cave. Alex's pulse quickened. The cave wasn't just a descent into water. It was a labyrinth that refused to forgive mistakes. She pushed forward, her flashlight slicing through the darkness. Every flicker of the beam revealed jagged rock formations, narrow passages, and caverns that seemed endless. And then she felt it, a subtle current pulling her deeper, faster than she expected. Panic nipped at her mind, but she clenched her jaw, forcing herself to focus. Minutes, or was it hours, passed. The water pressure pressed on her chest like invisible hands, and the walls of the cave seemed to close in. Then it happened. A sudden collapse of rocks above her created a cloud of silt, reducing visibility to near zero. Alex's breathing slowed, but fear whispered cruel lies. She was alone, trapped, and the walls of the blue hole weren't forgiving. As the silt settled, she realized the current had carried her into a narrow tunnel she hadn't noticed before. The tunnel wound like a snake, twisting and turning, and the darkness seemed alive. Shadows moved in the corners of her vision. At first, she tried to dismiss them, but then she saw the outline of something, or someone, watching her from the black. Her mind screamed for escape, but the path back was gone. Each heartbeat felt like a drum marking her descent toward oblivion. She forced herself to stay calm, repeating the mantra that had gotten her through countless dives. One breath at a time. Focus. Survive. The first hallucinations started soon after. A faint whispering echoed in the water, indistinct but insistent. Shapes danced in her peripheral vision. She shook her head, trying to force rationality. She had trained for long dives, mental endurance, isolation, but nothing had prepared her for being lost in a place that seemed to exist between life and death. And then she heard it, a deep, resonant hum vibrating through the rock walls. Not water, not her own heartbeat, something else. Alex's eyes widened. She wasn't just trapped in a cave. She was trapped in something alive. Panic clawed at her chest, but she forced herself to look deeper into the tunnel. The only option was forward. Every step, every kick of her fins, every flicker of the flashlight could be the difference between life and suffocation. The blue hole didn't forgive hesitation. Alex inhaled, metaphorically, because her lungs were empty, and pushed onward, disappearing into the darkness, with only her courage and will to survive guiding her. The tunnel seemed endless. Each flick of Alex's flashlight revealed walls slick with algae and strange coral formations, but the shadows between them seemed to move independently, like they were alive. She felt a shiver race down her spine, a mix of cold, fear, and adrenaline. Her lungs were screaming, though she reminded herself she still had time, but only if she stayed focused. Then she heard it again, the whispering. Faint at first, almost like the ocean itself was speaking, but growing louder with every kick. She paused, heart hammering, and shone the light around. Nothing. Just jagged walls and creeping darkness. Focus, Alex, she whispered to herself. Focus. Survive. But the whispering wasn't gone. Now it had rhythm, like a pulse matching her own heartbeat. Shapes flickered in her peripheral vision, faces, hands, impossible forms. Her mind screamed that it was hallucination, a trick of oxygen deprivation, but every fiber of her being screamed danger. Her fins brushed against something soft. Alex froze. She reached forward, groping in the darkness, fingers brushing against what felt like fabric, but underwater. The tunnel was narrow, and a panic wave crashed over her. She had to keep moving, yet her body tensed, every nerve screaming. A sudden surge of water from a hidden current threw her against the wall. Pain shot through her shoulder, and her flashlight wobbled, sending her vision into chaos. When she steadied herself, the tunnel ahead split into two paths. She had no way of knowing which led to safety, and no time to hesitate. Choosing instinct over logic, she pushed forward into the narrower passage. The walls scraped her sides, leaving red streaks on her wetsuit. The water pressure felt heavier here, as if the cave itself was closing in. Panic threatened to overtake her, but she fought it, counting breaths in her mind. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Her hallucinations intensified. The whispers became voices, urgent and pleading. Shadows formed into figures, familiar yet impossible. Friends, family, lost souls, each calling to her in tones she could barely endure. Alex forced herself to swim faster, though each kick drained her more. Her body trembled, her lungs ached, and the line between reality and nightmare blurred. Then came the collapse. Rocks tumbled from the ceiling, narrowly missing her head, sending clouds of silt into the water. Visibility dropped to zero. Alex was blind, surrounded by a choking haze, and the voices screamed louder, closer. Her oxygen was low, but she forced herself to remain calm. Panic is death. Calm is life. She touched the wall, tracing the jagged edge to guide her through. Every second felt like a minute. Every breath was precious. And then, in the suffocating blackness, she saw it, a faint glimmer of light far ahead. Hope surged through her, but it was fleeting. The tunnel twisted again, and the current pulled her downward, faster than she expected. The hallucinations intensified. She felt hands on her shoulders, whispers in her ears, eyes staring from the walls. Her heart pounded in terror and exhaustion. She screamed into her mask, hoping the sound would break the nightmare, but it was swallowed by water. Finally, gasping, trembling, and exhausted, Alex reached a small cavern. The current slowed here, and the water was clearer. She could see a faint patch of light above, the first glimpse of the surface since the descent. Relief and fear battled within her. She wasn't safe yet. Not even close. Her lungs burned, her arms ached, and her mind teetered on the edge of collapse. Every hallucination, every whisper, every shadow had been a test, and the blue hole wasn't done with her yet. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting her mind center. You survived this far. One breath at a time. One kick at a time. And then she heard it, a sound unlike the whispering. A deep, resonant rumble that shook the cavern walls. Something stirred in the depths, something massive, something alive. Alex's eyes snapped open. The real danger wasn't just the cave. It was what lurked beneath. The faint patch of light above the cavern gave Alex a sliver of hope, but the reality pressed in harder than ever. Her lungs screamed for oxygen, her arms ached from fighting the current, and her mind was fraying under the constant barrage of hallucinations. She knew instinctively that resting too long would be deadly, but moving forward without a plan could be just as fatal. The cavern was eerily silent, the only sound the faint rush of water around her and the echo of her own heartbeat. Her flashlight trembled in her hand, its beam shaking across jagged rocks and shadowy crevices. And then she saw it, a narrow opening in the far wall, barely wider than her shoulders, leading deeper into the cave. There was no choice. She swam toward it, every stroke a battle against exhaustion. As she entered the passage, the walls seemed to close in, pressing on her from all sides. Her wetsuit scraped against the rocks, leaving trails of red across her arms. Panic clawed at her chest, threatening to override reason. "Control yourself, Alex," she whispered, forcing each thought into order. "Control yourself, or die." A sudden rush of water from a hidden current slammed her against the wall. Pain shot through her ribs, stealing her breath for a moment. Her lungs burned, each inhale a razor of agony. She kicked desperately, propelling herself forward, and finally broke free of the current, but not without consequence. Her fins were damaged, the edge jagged and threatening to tear her wetsuit. The hallucinations returned, stronger and more vivid. Shadows danced like monsters on the walls, and whispers morphed into voices she recognized, friends and family, calling her name, pleading, accusing. Her own reflection appeared in the black water, distorted and grotesque. Alex clenched her jaw, trying to distinguish reality from illusion. She had to stay focused. She had to survive. Then it happened. She misjudged a turn in the tunnel. Her head struck a jagged rock, and stars exploded behind her eyelids. Pain surged through her skull, disorienting her, and she floated for a second in a daze. Oxygen wasn't just low, it was critical. She could feel her body screaming, limbs growing heavy, vision tunneling. Desperation took over. She forced herself to push onward, inch by inch, using the walls as guides. Every movement was agony. Every second brought her closer to suffocation. And yet, deep within the darkness, a strange calm settled over her. The hallucinations receded, leaving only the raw, urgent need to breathe. One more stretch. One more reach. A narrow ledge appeared ahead, rising slightly from the cave floor. Alex grasped it, pulling herself up, fighting the crushing weight of exhaustion. Her lungs burned, her vision blurred, and the water around her felt impossibly heavy. She was alone, trapped, teetering on the edge of life and death. And then, light. A faint, pulsing glow emanated from a fissure in the rock. It wasn't the surface. Not yet. But it was something, alive. Something waiting. Her curiosity fled, battling fear. Alex knew the cave had been testing her every step, every decision, every ounce of willpower. And now, whatever lay ahead would demand everything she had left. She pressed forward, ignoring the pain, ignoring the hallucinations, ignoring the scream of her own body. One breath, one stroke, one relentless push toward survival. But as she neared the glow, the cave trembled. A distant rumble echoed through the walls, vibrating in her bones. Something massive stirred below, something older than the blue hole itself. And Alex realized, with icy terror, that she was not just fighting the cave. She was fighting the unknown lurking within it. The faint glow ahead lured Alex like a fragile promise in the darkness. Her body screamed in protest, lungs burning, arms trembling, vision narrowing. But she pressed on, clinging to the fragile thread of hope. Every stroke carried her deeper into the labyrinthine heart of the blue hole. Then it hit, a violent shudder through the cave walls, echoing like thunder through water. Rocks tumbled from above, striking the tunnel walls with sharp crashes. Silt erupted in dense clouds, choking the water and blinding her. The current surged unpredictably, twisting her body, knocking her against jagged rock formations. Pain seared through her shoulder and ribs. Alex fought to stay upright, to swim forward, but the current was relentless, dragging her down narrow channels, into tight squeezes where her fins scraped raw against jagged edges. Panic clawed at her chest. Stay calm. Breathe. Her mantra barely held as oxygen dwindled, each second now a gamble between life and suffocation. And then, the collapse. A massive rock gave way, cutting off the tunnel she had entered. The silt thickened into a blinding fog, shadows dancing in her vision like grotesque phantoms. For a moment, the world shrank to her, the cave, and the terrifying quiet of being trapped. She clawed at the rocks, searching for a handhold, a path, anything. Her mind screamed, "You're alone. No one's coming." The whispers returned, a cacophony of voices, friends, strangers, lost souls, each calling her name, urging her to surrender. Alex shook her head violently, forcing reality into focus. Survive. One breath at a time. One kick at a time. Her flashlight beam caught the edge of a narrow fissure. Tiny, barely wide enough for her shoulders, but it was a path. She wedged herself in, scraping against sharp rocks, feeling blood mix with the cold water. Her lungs screamed. Her vision tunneled. Every movement demanded pain, courage, and precision. A sudden surge of current pushed her from behind, and she tumbled into a deeper cavern. The water pressure felt like it was crushing her chest. She coughed, trying to force air she didn't have. Her fins were useless now, damaged and tangled. She was suspended in the darkness, trapped in a liminal space where the cave and her mind became one. Then she saw it, a faint shimmer, dancing across the walls like liquid fire. Not hallucination, not light from above. Something moved in the water, massive, shadowy, and alive. Alex froze, heart hammering. Every instinct screamed get away, yet her body refused to move. The presence loomed closer. The water vibrated with its motion, an ancient force hidden in the blue hole, something that had watched divers vanish for decades. Alex's mind teetered on the edge of panic. Oxygen. Almost gone. Strength. Almost gone. Sanity. Shredded. She forced herself to kick. One stroke. Another. Inch by inch, she moved toward the shimmer, toward the unknown, toward survival. Pain racked her body. Her lungs burned like fire. Shadows of hallucinations merged with reality, making every movement a battle against mind and body alike. A final surge of water slammed her against the cavern wall. The shimmer dissolved into darkness. Alex was alone, suspended in a water-filled grave with only one thing left: sheer will. One breath from death. One decision away from oblivion. The water around Alex was cold, suffocating, and oppressive. Every movement was agony. Her lungs were screaming, her arms trembling, and her mind teetered on the edge of collapse. And then she saw it, a shape so vast, so impossible, that her first instinct was disbelief. It moved with silent power, gliding through the water like a shadow carved from the depths. Massive, dark, and alive, it seemed almost aware of her presence. Alex froze, the reality of the predator pressing on her like the cave walls themselves. Every instinct screamed to flee, but there was nowhere to go. The hallucinations fled again. Familiar faces, distorted and accusing, reached for her in the water, while the predator's shadow loomed larger. Alex tried to focus, clinging to the rhythm of her training. Calm, deliberate movements. One wrong stroke, one hesitation, and the cave, or the predator, would claim her. Her flashlight illuminated the edges of its massive form for an instant. Scars on natural ridges. She couldn't tell. Its sheer size made the walls seem like paper, the tunnels impossibly small. Her heart pounded so violently that the thrum echoed in her ears louder than the water's movement. She inched sideways, using the walls for leverage, careful not to make a splash. The predator shifted, a smooth, fluid movement, almost aware of her attempts to hide. Panic threatened to consume her. Her lungs screamed for air, and oxygen was now critical. Her vision blurred, hallucinations intensifying, blending with the shadows of the massive creature. Suddenly, a sharp current pushed her toward a narrow fissure. Rocks scraped her sides, drawing blood, but it was her only chance. Alex wedged herself into the tight gap, barely fitting, her heart hammering, lungs screaming. The predator paused, its shadow darkening the cavern, probing, almost curious, before retreating slightly into the deeper blackness. Alone again, Alex sank into the water, trembling, blooded, but alive, for now. Every muscle ached. Every breath was fire in her lungs. And yet, somewhere deep inside, she felt a spark of determination. She would survive. She had to survive. The hallucinations didn't leave. Faces twisted into mocking expressions, whispering, accusing her of failure. She clenched her teeth, focusing on the one truth she could hold on to. Keep moving. Keep fighting. One breath at a time. And then, through the darkness, she glimpsed another passage. Small, perilous, but leading deeper, perhaps closer to the surface. The predator lurked behind her, unseen but felt. Every stroke now carried the weight of life and death. The blue hole was alive, and Alex had to outsmart it, outlast it, and outswim the terror waiting in its depths. Alex forced herself forward through the narrow passage, each movement a battle against exhaustion and pain. Her lungs screamed for oxygen, every stroke a torture of burning muscles and panicked heartbeat. The cave seemed alive, shifting and twisting as if mocking her struggle. Shadows danced on the walls, figures she knew, yet didn't. Her sister's face, her own reflection, faces of divers who never returned. They whispered warnings, accusations, pleas. Alex tried to focus, tried to ignore them, but the voices seeped into her mind, growing louder with every second of oxygen-starved delirium. A sudden shift in the water pushed her into a small chamber. The ceiling hung perilously low, jagged rocks threatening to crush her if she miscalculated. Her flashlight flickered, revealing a faint shimmer in the water, a hint of bioluminescent life, or another trick of a delirious mind. Alex couldn't tell. She reached for the wall, feeling the slick texture under her fingertips, and forced herself to continue. Her lungs were at their limit. Each breath felt like inhaling fire. Vision tunneled. Every stroke became a gamble. She felt the predator's presence again, a subtle vibration in the water, a shadow that didn't belong to the cave walls. Panic fled, but she forced herself to calm, repeating her mantra, one breath, one stroke, survive. Then the hallucinations intensified. The walls rippled with faces, hands stretching toward her, shadows merging into shapes she could no longer distinguish from the predator. She screamed, but the sound dissolved into water. Her body was on the brink of collapse, and her mind threatened to follow. Desperation drove her. She wedged herself into a tiny fissure, using every ounce of strength to pull forward, inch by agonizing inch. The water pressed in, the cave threatened to swallow her whole, and the whispers clawed at her sanity. And then, a faint light above. Not the glow of the cave's bioluminescence, not the shimmer of hallucinations, but sunlight piercing through the water from the surface. Hope fled. She focused every last bit of strength, kicking and pulling, ignoring the burning in her chest and arms. The current surged again, violent and unpredictable, but Alex refused to give in. Every stroke was agony, every movement a test of will. Finally, she reached a narrow shaft leading toward the surface. Her lungs were on fire, her vision blurred, and hallucinations screamed all around her, but she saw it, the open water, freedom, air, life. With one final push, one final burst of sheer determination, Alex shot upward. The water rushed past her, pressure lifting, her lungs screaming, and then, she broke the surface. Gasping, coughing, and shivering, she inhaled the sweet, burning air. Sunlight hit her face, warm and blinding. She had survived, just. But as she floated, trembling and exhausted, she realized the blue hole had not given up its secrets. The predator remained below, the whispers still haunted her mind, and every hallucination, every shadow, every fear had left marks that would not fade. She had survived the dive, but would she survive the memories? Alex floated on the surface, her body trembling, lungs burning with every desperate inhale. The sunlight was warm, almost comforting, but the calmness of the open water did little to soothe the storm raging in her mind. She had survived the blue hole, barely, but the memories of the cave, the hallucinations, the whispers, and the massive shadow of the predator lingered like stains she couldn't wash away. Her wetsuit clung to her skin, soaked with blood and brine. Every muscle ached, every joint screamed, and her hands were raw from scraping against jagged rocks. But it wasn't just the physical pain. The deeper scars were mental. The whispers still echoed in her head, the faces of hallucinations haunting the edges of her vision. Each shadow beneath the waves seemed to carry a memory of the predator, waiting, watching, unforgotten. Alex tried to calm herself, breathing slowly, focusing on the rhythm of her heartbeat. She replayed the dive in her mind, the initial descent, the narrowing tunnels, the collapsing rocks, the hallucinations, the surge of currents, and the massive creature lurking beneath. She had survived every obstacle, but at what cost? Every instinct screamed that she should leave the water, swim to shore, and never return. Yet another part of her, a stubborn, defiant part, was already planning. She needed answers. She needed closure. The blue hole had taken so many before her, and its secrets were still buried deep. But first, survival. Alex swam cautiously toward the nearest rock formation, dragging herself onto a small ledge. The sun felt scorching on her skin, and the open sky seemed impossibly vast after the claustrophobic tunnels. She collapsed on the rocks, gasping, tears mingling with salt water on her face. Relief, terror, exhaustion, and a strange exhilaration mingled within her. Even as she lay there, shivering and broken, she couldn't shake the feeling that the blue hole wasn't finished with her. The predator remained in the depths, unseen but ever present. The cave had tested her body, mind, and spirit, and though she had survived, the blue hole had marked her. The whispers that had haunted her underwater now seemed quieter, almost contemplative. Perhaps it was just her mind trying to reconcile the horrors she had faced. Or perhaps, somewhere in the depths, the blue hole's secrets were watching, waiting for another chance. Alex closed her eyes, breathing slowly, allowing herself a moment of fragile calm. She had lived, but survival was just the beginning. The blue hole had taken her innocence, her certainty, and left her with a truth she could not escape. In the depths, nothing is ever truly gone, and every breath might be your last. The sun had barely risen when Alex stood on the edge of her small boat, staring into the yawning mouth of the blue hole. Calm, blue, and deceptively serene, the water seemed innocent to anyone who didn't know the horrors beneath. But she knew. Every second she'd spent trapped below replayed in her mind, the crushing darkness, the hallucinations, the suffocating currents, the shadowy predator. Her heart thudded, but this time the fear was tempered with determination. She couldn't leave the blue hole's secrets unanswered. Survival wasn't enough. She needed closure, needed to prove that she could face the depths and the nightmare that had almost claimed her. Strapping on her gear, she checked every detail meticulously: fins, mask, flashlight, oxygen timer. Her body still ached from the last dive, her muscles stiff, her skin raw. But her mind, sharpened by terror, was clear, calm, focused. The descent was slower this time, controlled, deliberate. Each stroke was measured. Each kick was precise. Alex forced herself to notice every sound: the gentle rush of water, the faint hum of currents, the occasional distant echo that might be the predator, or might be her imagination. As she entered the familiar tunnel, the hallucinations started almost immediately. Faces and shadows reached from the walls. Whispers filled her ears, demanding surrender, taunting, warning. Her stomach churned. Her heart raced, but she focused on her breathing, on counting each second, on moving forward. She had faced these illusions before. She could do it again. Then she reached the chamber where the massive creature had first revealed itself. The water shimmered, and the predator's shadow loomed beneath her. Its presence was immense, suffocating, alive. Alex froze, gripping the walls, muscles coiled with tension. The creature moved slowly, deliberately, almost as if it were testing her resolve. Her flashlight caught its eye, a dark, reflective orb staring into hers, filled with an intelligence she hadn't expected. Fear and awe collided in her chest. She realized the blue hole was not just a natural trap. It was a domain, a predator, an entity as ancient and merciless as the sea itself. Her body trembled, her lungs screamed, but Alex forced herself forward. She needed to navigate past the creature, deeper into the cave. Every motion was a delicate dance between survival and death. The predator followed, circling, testing her. Then, the hallucinations merged with reality. The cave walls seemed to pulse, breathing with her fear. The predator's shadow elongated, twisting like smoke, reaching toward her. Every stroke, every breath, every thought was a struggle against mind, body, and the living cave itself. Alex realized the blue hole had a rhythm, a heartbeat. To survive, she had to move with it, respect it, anticipate it. Panic would kill her. Every fiber of her being screamed to run, but there was no escape. Only forward. And so she pressed on, deeper, knowing that the further she went, the closer she would come. The deeper Alex swam, the darker the water became. Her flashlight flickered, shadows twisting unnaturally on the jagged walls. Each pulse of her heart echoed through the tunnel, amplified by the suffocating silence of the blue hole. The predator was still there, lurking, silent, a presence she could feel more than see. Her oxygen timer blinked urgently, critical now. Each movement burned like fire in her lungs, each stroke a battle against both exhaustion and fear. The hallucinations were relentless. Distorted faces and hands reached out from the walls, accusing, pleading, tempting her to give in. She clenched her teeth, forcing focus. One breath. One stroke. Survive. Ahead, the tunnel opened into a massive chamber. It was enormous, far larger than any she had encountered, yet claustrophobic in its own way, the ceiling low, walls jagged. The predator's shadow moved beneath her, circling like a slow, inevitable storm. Alex's mind screamed at her to retreat, but there was no path back. The collapse she had witnessed before had blocked any simple exit. Forward was the only choice. A sudden surge of water slammed her sideways. Pain shot through her ribs and shoulder, stealing what little oxygen remained. She fought to steady herself, kicking with what little strength remained, using her hands to grip the jagged rocks. The predator lurked below, massive and patient, its presence radiating a terrifying intelligence. Alex scanned the chamber desperately. A fissure in the ceiling offered the only possibility of ascent, narrow, treacherous, and partially blocked by jagged stone. Every movement required precision. One misstep could crush her against the rocks or push her deeper into the predator's reach. Her lungs burned. Vision tunneled. Hallucinations reached a fever pitch. Faces merged with shadows, the whispers now a cacophony of madness. She gasped, forcing each inhale, knowing oxygen would run out in seconds. Every stroke now felt like her last. Summoning the last reserves of her strength, Alex wedged her body into the fissure, sliding upward through the narrow gap. The predator lunged, a sudden surge beneath her, and she felt the immense pressure of its presence graze her fins. Panic screamed, but Alex ignored it, using sheer will to keep moving. Her arms clawed at the jagged edges, scraping, bleeding, trembling. Finally, she broke through into a smaller chamber above, the water slightly calmer, light glimmering faintly from cracks above. Her body shook violently, lungs burning, vision blurred, but she was alive. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, she could breathe, if only barely. The predator retreated into the black depths, patient, waiting. Alex's chest heaved as she forced herself to calm, realizing that survival didn't mean safety. It only meant the battle continued. The blue hole was alive, and the creature below was not done testing her. She hung suspended in the water, blooded, battered, and exhausted, yet unbroken. Her mind was frayed, her body screaming, but her determination burned brighter than ever. She had reached the heart of the abyss, and lived. The question remained, would she escape the blue hole alive, or would the final test come too soon? To the heart of the blue hole, and the final confrontation with its guardian. The water in the chamber was nearly still, a deceptive calm after the chaos she had endured. Alex's body trembled violently, her muscles screaming in protest, her lungs on fire from oxygen starvation. She floated for a moment, gathering every ounce of strength and courage. Ahead lay the final passage, the narrow, jagged tunnel she had glimpsed moments ago, the only route that might lead her to freedom. The predator's presence was unmistakable. Though it remained hidden in the black depths below, Alex could feel its awareness, its patience, its silent, deadly intent. Every instinct screamed retreat, but retreat was impossible. Forward was the only choice. She began the climb through the narrow fissure, scraping her shoulders and arms against the jagged stone. Blood mingled with the salt water around her, but pain no longer registered. It was survival now, pure, primal, unrelenting. The hallucinations came back with a vengeance. Faces, shadows, whispers, blurring into one monstrous vision. The walls seemed to breathe, twist, and close in on her. Her mind teetered on the brink of madness. One miscalculation, one faint hesitation, and she would be crushed, or claimed by the predator lurking beneath. Her lungs were burning beyond endurance. Each movement was agony, but she forced herself upward, counting her strokes in her head, measuring her breaths, clinging to life with sheer willpower. The predator surged beneath her suddenly, testing her resolve, a massive shadow brushing the jagged rocks. Panic fled, but Alex forced control, positioning her body carefully, inching past danger, a ghost in the water. Finally, the tunnel opened into a vertical shaft leading toward the surface. Sunlight, faint and distant, glimmered above. Relief surged, but it was tempered by exhaustion. Her arms trembled, her chest burned, her lungs screamed for air she barely had. She kicked desperately, clawing toward the light with everything left in her battered body. The predator lunged once more, a sudden, massive rush from the darkness. Alex felt the water move violently, pressure forcing her down, but she refused to let go. Every ounce of her being concentrated on one singular thought: air, life, freedom. With a final, desperate push, Alex broke through the surface. Sunlight blinded her, and her lungs inhaled the precious, burning air. Gasping, coughing, shivering, she floated in the open water, feeling the warmth of the sun and the vastness of the ocean above. The blue hole's maw lay behind her, silent, menacing, and eternal. She had survived. Her body was broken, her mind scarred, her spirit tested to its limits, but she was alive. The predator remained in the depths, unseen yet ever present, a reminder that the blue hole claimed many and spared few. Alex looked back at the shimmering abyss, feeling both fear and respect. She had faced the ultimate test of body and mind, of will and courage. And though the blue hole's secrets remained, one truth was clear. She had stared death in the face, and lived. For now. Alex closed her notebook, taking a deep, steadying breath. Life above the water was fragile, precious, and unpredictable. She had earned her second chance. And though the blue hole's secrets remained, she had faced them, and survived. Alex sat on the boat, the island behind her now a distant silhouette. The blue hole shimmered silently in the sunlight, calm, innocent to the untrained eye, but she knew better. Every ripple, every shadow beneath the surface carried the memory of what she had endured. Even after hours of rest, exhaustion clung to her like a second skin. Cuts and bruises throbbed, and her muscles refused to cooperate fully. But it wasn't just the body. Her mind refused to settle. Hallucinations haunted the corners of her vision. Whispers of the deep lingered in the back of her mind. The predator had not followed, not physically, but its presence remained, etched into her memory. Alex opened her notebook, reviewing her account of the dive. Every detail mattered. The collapsing tunnels, the crushing currents, the suffocating darkness, the hallucinations, and the predator. The words weighed heavily, but they were her shield, a record of survival, proof that she had faced death and lived. As the sun began to dip toward the horizon, painting the sky in streaks of orange and crimson, a sudden movement in the water caught her eye. A shadow, massive and slow, passed beneath the boat. Her heart skipped, lungs tightening, not from lack of oxygen this time, but from recognition. The predator remained. Silent, patient, watching. Alex's body tensed, every nerve alert. Fear surged, but it was tempered by understanding. She had survived the blue hole once. She had learned its rhythm, faced its horrors, and endured. She could survive it again, if she respected its power and remained vigilant. The shadow vanished as quickly as it appeared, leaving the water calm once more. Alex exhaled, a slow, steady breath, her pulse returning to normal. She realized that survival was not about defeating the blue hole or the predator. It was about endurance, awareness, and respect. The abyss had tested her, but she had emerged stronger, wiser, and alive. As night fell, she set course for home, the horizon stretching endlessly before her. The blue hole remained behind, a silent, eternal challenge. And Alex knew this truth deep in her soul. She had survived the impossible, but the echoes of the depths would remain with her forever. Alex stood on solid ground, her feet finally touching the warm sand after the ordeal of the blue hole. The waves lapped gently against the shore, their rhythm soothing, almost hypnotic. She took a deep breath, letting the salt air fill her lungs, feeling the ache in her muscles, the bruises in her arms, and the faint scars across her body. Every mark told a story of survival against impossible odds. Her mind, however, was not yet at peace. Hallucinations, whispers, and shadows of the predator lingered in the back of her thoughts. She closed her eyes, recalling the suffocating darkness, the crushing pressure, the surreal hallucinations, and the terrifying presence of the predator. The memories were vivid, almost tangible, a reminder that the blue hole had left its mark on more than just her body. Alex walked along the shore, each step deliberate. She reflected on the lessons the depths had taught her. Courage is forged in terror, willpower is sharpened by suffering, and survival is as much a mental battle as it is physical. The predator had not been defeated. It had merely acknowledged her endurance, leaving her alive, but forever changed. She glanced back at the endless blue, beyond the horizon. The sun glinted on the water, sparkling and inviting, yet she felt no longing to return. The blue hole's secrets were hers alone to carry. They were dangerous, beautiful, and eternal. Her gaze shifted to the notebook she carried, the record of her dive. Every detail was there, the collapse, the hallucinations, the knee-death moments, the predator. Writing it had been cathartic, a way to process what had happened, a way to claim her experience as both a warning and a testament. Alex's heart thumped steadily, a slow, grounding rhythm. She knew she had survived the impossible. And yet, a quiet tension remained, a subtle reminder that the blue hole's depths were eternal and patient, waiting for the next challenger. For now, she had life, freedom, and the knowledge that she could face the abyss and survive. She had stayed into death and emerged stronger, wiser, and unbroken. The waves whispered around her, carrying away fear, leaving only the memory of what she had endured, and the eternal respect owed to the depths. Alex took one last look at the horizon, a silent vow forming in her mind. She would live fully, but never forget the blue hole, the predator, or the lessons of survival it had forced upon her. Months had passed since Alex's dive into the blue hole. The world above water was familiar and safe, yet nothing felt the same. Every sound of rushing water, every shadow in the waves, made her pause. Her body had healed, but her mind remained attuned to the abyss, every heartbeat echoing the memory of suffocation, darkness, and the predator's silent presence. She had returned to her daily life, friends and family unaware of the horrors she had endured. To them, it was just a diving accident, a lucky escape. To Alex, it was far more, a confrontation with an ancient, sentient force that had tested her in ways no human mind was designed to withstand. Yet she was stronger. Every morning she woke with gratitude. Every breath felt like a victory. And every night, when the ocean whispered outside her window, she remembered the lessons the blue hole had imposed. Courage is forged in terror, survival is measured by persistence, and respect for the unknown is mandatory. But the predator's shadow lingered in her thoughts, a reminder that the blue hole's depths remained undefeated. Somewhere below, waiting, patient, eternal. She could feel its gaze, even miles away from the cave, a whisper in her mind that survival was never permanent. It was a moment, fleeting, fragile. Alex walked along the shoreline one evening, staring into the horizon where the sun melted into the sea. She ran her fingers through the notebook she had kept, the account of her dive, her near-death experiences, and the lessons etched into her mind. She knew she would never return to the blue hole. Not willingly. But part of her could never forget, could never let go. And as the waves lapped against the sand, a shiver ran down her spine. A shadow passed beneath the water, too deep to be identified. A flicker of memory, a whisper of terror, reminded her that the depths were alive. Watching, waiting. Alex took a deep, steadying breath. She had survived the impossible. She had faced death, fear, and the unknown. But the blue hole, and its silent guardian, remained. And she knew that survival was not the end. It was the beginning of understanding, respect, and eternal vigilance. The ocean stretched endlessly before her, beautiful, terrifying, and eternal. And somewhere in its depths, the whisper of the predator waited, patient as ever, leaving a final, chilling thought. Some places are never meant to be conquered, only survived. Months had passed, and Alex had returned to the rhythms of life above the waves. She trained, dove cautiously in familiar waters, and tried to rebuild a sense of normalcy. But the blue hole remained vivid in her mind, a memory that refused to fade. Every shadow beneath the water, every subtle current, reminded her of the predator waiting in the depths. Her notebook sat on the desk, filled with every detail of her dive, the collapse, the hallucinations, the suffocating tunnels, the predator. She reread it sometimes, not for nostalgia, but as a reminder. Survival was a choice, a battle fought one breath at a time. One evening, she stood on the edge of the ocean, watching the sun sink into the horizon. Calm waves lapped at her feet, sparkling and inviting, yet her instincts told her that the ocean still held secrets she had yet to understand. Her heart tightened as a shadow passed beneath the surface, fleeting, deep, and unidentifiable. A shiver ran down her spine. She knew instinctively that the predator had not forgotten her, that the blue hole's depths were patient and eternal. Survival had not ended the danger, it had merely postponed it. Alex clenched her fists, a mix of fear and defiance coursing through her. She had faced the impossible and survived. She had stared death in the eye and emerged alive. And if the depths called again, if the blue hole demanded another challenge, she would be ready. But for now, she stepped back from the edge, her mind sharp, her body healing, and her spirit unbroken. The ocean stretched endlessly before her, beautiful, terrifying, eternal. And somewhere, deep beneath the waves, the predator waited, patient as ever, a reminder that the abyss was alive, and survival was never guaranteed. Alex whispered to herself, almost in defiance, "I survived, and I will survive again." The waves whispered back, carrying away fear, leaving only the eternal echo of the blue hole. Weeks had passed since Alex's cautious return to the ocean, yet sleep brought no comfort. The blue hole haunted her dreams, its darkness curling around her like smoke, whispers echoing in the back of her mind. She awoke at odd hours, the memory of the predator's gaze still vivid, its intelligence and patience etched into her consciousness. Even during daylight, the ocean seemed alive with subtle movements, fleeting shadows that made her pulse quicken. Her friends laughed at her caution, calling her paranoia, but Alex knew better. The blue hole's depths were patient, eternal, and cunning. Survival was not permanent. It was a fleeting gift, one she could not take for granted. She returned to her dive gear, meticulously checking every piece, each strap, every fin. Training sessions became exercises in precision, focus, and mental control. The hallucinations from her near-death experience had faded but not disappeared entirely, appearing as fleeting flashes in the corner of her vision, reminders that the predator's presence lingered in her mind. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the horizon in fiery streaks, Alex noticed something unusual, a faint ripple in the water, far from the blue hole itself. The motion was subtle, deliberate, almost unnatural. Her heart pounded. Could it be another predator? A warning? Or was the blue hole's influence reaching beyond its boundaries? Alex's instincts screamed caution. She moved slowly along the shore, eyes scanning the water. Fear mixed with resolve, creating a tension that tightened every muscle. She realized that her survival had not ended her challenges. The ocean was alive, and the predator, or whatever force controlled the blue hole, was still watching, waiting, patient as ever. She clenched her fists, the notebook of her experiences at her side. Each detail she had recorded became a tool, a weapon, and a warning. She would survive, again and again if necessary. The blue hole could test her, but she had learned its rhythm, understood its dangers, and faced the abyss with knowledge few could claim. Yet deep in her chest, a quiet, uneasy thought persisted. The depths are patient, and they never forget. Alex took a slow breath, steadying herself against the tension. The horizon stretched endlessly before her, beautiful and terrifying. She had survived the impossible, but the echoes beneath the surface promised that the story was far from over. Alex had returned to the calm waters near the blue hole, determined to study the ocean from a safe distance. Yet the calm was deceptive. Shadows beneath the waves seemed heavier, deliberate. A strange current tugged at her boat, slow but insistent, as though the depths were testing her patience. Her heart raced. She scanned the horizon, but nothing visible moved, yet the feeling of being watched was overwhelming. Memories of the predator surged, hallucinations mingled with reality, and Alex realized her survival had only made her more aware. The blue hole's influence extended beyond its cavernous maw. With a steadying breath, she opened her notebook. Each observation she had recorded from her dive became a reference point, a strategy. She would not be caught unprepared again. But even with planning, a shiver ran down her spine. The ocean whispered that some dangers were beyond human comprehension. Late at night, Alex noticed something unusual, a faint glow deep beneath the water near the blue hole's entrance. Not bioluminescence, but something more deliberate, pulsing, rhythmic. Her pulse quickened. The predator? Another unknown force? She equipped her dive gear, determined to investigate, though carefully. Each stroke brought her closer to the glow, the shadows lengthening, curling around her like silent tendrils. The water felt alive, responsive, almost sentient. Then a sudden ripple surged toward her, fast and violent, knocking her against the rocks. Panic fled, but she forced control. The glow receded, leaving a void of darkness and silence. Alex realized she had witnessed a signal, a warning or an invitation. She didn't know which. The next morning, Alex couldn't ignore the signal. With meticulous preparation, she descended toward the blue hole once more, keeping every movement calculated. The deeper she went, the darker the water became, heavier with tension. Shadows flitted at the edge of her vision, hallucinations or predators, she couldn't tell. The glow appeared again, faint but steady, pulsing like a heartbeat. Each pulse seemed to communicate something she couldn't understand, drawing her deeper into the cave system she had barely survived before. Her lungs burned, her muscles screamed, but Alex pressed on. She was ready now, her mind sharper, her body conditioned, her resolve unbreakable. The blue hole had taken much from her before, but this time, she was not just surviving. She was seeking answers. As she approached the glow, the water shifted violently. Currents surged unpredictably, pushing her toward a vast chamber deep beneath the cave's entrance. And then she saw it, the predator. Larger, more imposing than before, its eyes reflecting the faint light like twin coals. It didn't move aggressively at first. Instead, it watched, intelligent and patient. Alex froze, feeling the full weight of the abyss pressing down. The hallucinations she had feared for months returned, intertwining with the reality of the creature before her. But now, fear was tempered by understanding. She had survived once. She had endured every test. Her mind was calm, her body ready. Every movement was deliberate, measured. The predator had awakened fully, not as a mindless threat, but as the guardian of the blue hole's secrets. Alex realized that this encounter would determine the next chapter of her life. The depths were patient, eternal, and unyielding, but so was she. Survival was no longer enough. She had to confront, endure, and navigate the predator's intelligence, or be claimed by the abyss once and for all. Alex descended deeper into the blue hole than ever before. The glow pulsed like a heartbeat, guiding her into the labyrinthine tunnels. Currents twisted unpredictably, testing her agility and resolve. Every movement demanded precision. One mistake could be fatal. Shadows moved at the edges of her vision, some hallucinations, some real. She could feel the predator's gaze, patient and intelligent, tracking her progress. Her heart hammered, lungs burning, but determination fueled every stroke. She was no longer a frightened diver. She was a survivor, trained by terror and sharpened by experience. Ahead, the tunnels opened into an immense chamber. The glow now radiated from the cavern walls themselves, illuminating a massive underwater alcove, pulsing rhythmically, almost like the cave had its own life. The predator emerged from the shadows, immense and deliberate, its presence commanding every inch of the chamber. Alex floated, analyzing the predator's movements. It was intelligent, aware, patient, and its intentions were unreadable. The hallucination swirled, blending with reality, but Alex forced focus, distinguishing between fear and the actual threat. The currents surged violently, pushing her against jagged rocks. She clung to the cavern walls, using her strength and knowledge of the cave to stabilize herself. Every step, every kick, every breath was a negotiation with the depths and its guardian. Suddenly, the predator surged toward her, not attacking immediately, but testing, probing her reaction. Alex responded with deliberate, calm movements, refusing to panic. She realized that to survive, she had to think like the predator, anticipate, adapt, endure. Oxygen levels dropped dangerously low. Alex's lungs burned, vision narrowing as fatigue and stress mounted. The predator's shadow loomed above her, immense, yet patient. She was trapped between the cavern walls and the predator's testing presence. Every hallucination screamed to surrender, to give in, but Alex's mind was unyielding. She recalled every lesson from her first dive, every struggle, every narrow escape. Her body moved instinctively, flowing with the currents, using the predator's own movements to guide her through the treacherous tunnels. Each second felt like an eternity. Her lungs begged for air. Her muscles trembled. Yet she pressed on, calculating each movement, surviving by instinct and will alone. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Alex reached a narrow shaft that led upward. The faint light of the surface glimmered above, a beacon of life and freedom. The predator lingered in the depths, its eyes watching, measuring, acknowledging her endurance. With one final, desperate push, Alex broke through into open water. Sunlight blinded her as she inhaled deeply, lungs burning with the precious air of survival. She floated, trembling, battered, exhausted, but alive. The blue hole remained behind her, a massive, eternal entity. The predator was still below, patient and intelligent, a reminder that survival was never permanent, only earned. Alex looked back once, the waves reflecting the late afternoon sun. She had faced death, fear, and the unknown, and she had emerged stronger, wiser, unbroken. But the depths would always be there, waiting. And somewhere, the predator's eyes watched silently, eternal, reminding her that the abyss was never truly conquered.